Well, good evening and welcome to How to Rock the Virtual Stage. I'm your host, the Trigger, Rich Bontrager. Welcome to Colorado from wherever you are at in the great universe of life. I hope it's been a great day for you because you're in for an exciting evening tonight. We are going to be talking about the voice, the speech, the tongue, and a lot of other great things that all have to do with the virtual stage. So please stick around for the entire time. Plus, at the end, there's always a surprise that always comes your way. So don't miss out on that. I want to let you know coming up in the next 2 weeks, we have more exciting guests. Every week, my goal is to help you rock the virtual stage. You could be an author, you could be a leader, you could be a speaker, you could be someone that's just beginning to figure out that you have a message, but with COVID, with everything going on and the advent of the virtual stage, you really don't know what you're doing. We want to give you gifts, tips, practical new insights to help you better rock this thing. So every week we are live with experts to co-coach and share with you the experience to help you rock it a little bit further. Coming up next week, Tina Greenbaum is going to be with me. She is a peak performance coach, an executive coach, leadership and employees. Now, we've not touched on this too much here, but more and more companies, businesses are trying to run their businesses through the lens, and leaders, employees are having a tough time figuring out how to do it effectively. So Tina's going to be on with us, and we're going to talk more about how to do that. Don't miss it. The following week, we're going to have Elsa Page on the show. She is an entrepreneur consultant, a strategy to action expert, and she's going to pick up right where we leave off with Tina probably, because she's about community building. If you have Facebook, if you have LinkedIn, if you're trying to build these virtual communities and grow your tribe, that's going to be perfect for you to have Elsa with us and talk about how to do that through the virtual landscape. So don't miss next 2 weeks. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Eventbrite is our main portal right now for that. But some big announcements, some things with that are going to be changing. For example, several weeks ago, we officially joined the C-Suite TV network. We're loading all of our past episodes up to C-Suite, and in the future, everything is going to be running through them as well. So stick with us. You're in for a ride the next several weeks of great, new, exciting, big stuff coming up. I can't wait to tell you about it. But tonight, we're going to talk about the speech, the tongue, and Lynda Katz Wilner is with us tonight. She's coming in from Washington, D.C. So again, we are going all over the map here. She's a speech, language, soft skills executive coach, an accent modification expert, a specialist in this area, and she does coaching and training. Now, she's helping people to speak, sound, and look like a leader. Putting the whole package together here tonight, folks. One thing we've all learned right now is usually speakers struggle with the microphone to begin with. We freak out. Now we have a camera in front of us, and it makes it a lot harder to speak and present. So Lynda is going to help us with some of that. And she's also worked with people with speech impediments and struggling with things that trip them up that you have to overcome. So tonight, welcome Lynda Katz Wilner to the stage. Welcome, Lynda.
Thank you, Rich. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, concerns and anxieties. I've read a lot about that as we prepare for this. People get very concerned and very anxious when they jump on camera. But before we get into that aspect of it, you're a natural at this. Or how did you make it to the stage, and how did you begin to bring speech and all the things you bring into this landscape?
That's a great question. And let me start and say first, not everybody's a natural at this. I don't think I was a natural at this. I hated public speaking in high school. I had the fear of public speaking, like 74% of the people in the United States. Most people see that as one of the top fears. And even it's been joked about the fact that it even is higher than the fear of death. So public speaking doesn't always come naturally, but it takes practice. But you asked me how I came to it. By training, I'm a speech and language pathologist, and I've been that for many, many years. We don't have to say how many, but I started my career working with people who had speech, language, and voice disorders, children and adults, people who've had strokes, people who lost their voice, their inability to speak. And it was my passion to help people communicate that then led me into the workplace, because the issues may be different It may not be because of a physical disability like a stroke or head and neck cancer or a spinal cord injury or somebody who stutters or any of the other problems that people might have, which might be called communication disorders. But the problem is the same in that people have trouble communicating. And so it's been my love to help people communicate that it was a natural transition to start working with people in the workplace.
Well, as we'll get into it, we're going to share some of my story and we're going to go to some of those other things. But because nervousness, anxiety is one of the biggest things, it's the number one fear of speaking. And like you said, it's even higher than death sometimes. People just don't want to get up and do this thing. So we have several guests on the platform tonight in the background. In the second half, you guys are all going to come on. You get to ask Lynda your own questions and participate with cameras and microphones on. So relax for the first half hour. But the question I want to pose to you is, on a scale of 1 to 10, and we're going to pop up in the poll right now, are you afraid of speaking in public? Are you nervous about speaking in public? How would you rate yourself, 1 to 10? Give us a sense of how you're doing as we continue our conversation here. We're going to launch the poll and let you all chime on in here. And let's go back to our discussion here, Lynda. Let's start with that whole nervousness thing. What do you coach and how do you help people when they get the sweaty palms? They start just, it's dripping and they can't get the tongue, the mic, anything to work. What do you do?
Well, over the years, I've done a lot of work in this area, and I do master classes in public speaking. And usually the biggest concern is the anxiety. First, let me tell you, early in my career, in my 20s, when I was giving presentations at international and national conventions, of course I was nervous, very intimidated by the audience, worried about the fact that maybe I don't belong up here. How can I be giving this information? They'll find out that I really may not know everything I think I know, and maybe my career will be ruined because of that. And somebody said to me, who had been presenting, and he was much older than I was at the time, and he said, the morning you get up to give a presentation and you're not nervous, that's the day you should worry. And when I tell that to my clients, they say, I can't believe even experienced people get nervous. And it's all about, how do you frame it? Is it nervousness or is it excitement? And again, that fight, flight, freeze response from our brain, our amygdala, which makes us, the primitive brain thought we were running away from a bear or whatever might be chasing us. Our brain goes into overdrive and we may panic and we start perspiring. We have a very shallow breath. Our hands start shaking. We have indigestion. Everything, our heart is pounding out of our chest because we feel the threat, which may be public speaking. So the reaction is the same, but we need to think of two ways to address it. One is physiologically, how can we trick our brain so that we're calmer? And cognitively, what are we telling ourselves? I was telling myself the wrong things in my 20s. I was worried about everything that would go wrong. We have to have that positive self-talk. We need to be prepared. We need to know that we will survive this and get on the other end of it. And the most important thing that will help us with our brain is it's not about us. It's about the audience. And if we focus on the audience, we take the attention away from ourselves and we tend to be less nervous.
So we'll pause it for a second. That's so much to unpack right there. That's a great takeoff point. We're going to look at this poll here, and this is kind of interesting to where everyone is coming in, and I want you to speak into this a little bit here because we have a three-way split of number 1, kind of average at number 4. We got number 7 in there, and then we got 10. People are like either definitely afraid, or they're like not afraid at all, or somewhere in between. So is this kind of what you see on average when you talk to people, that it is a smattering, or is it one way or the other, higher or lower?
Well, the people who come to me usually are on the lower end because that's why they're coming to me. And again, some of it's situational. Some of it may be I have a fear of public speaking at work because I worry that it's going to affect my job. It's going to affect the impression I have. And again, it gets back to, what are you thinking? What are you thinking about? And how can you talk yourself through that? How can you prepare? If you're prepared, you may still have the jitters when you get up there, but it's the excitement. But if you're prepared, you'll do all right. There are people who have had horrible things happen when they're speaking. I knew somebody who had a new pair of shoes during this big competition, got up on stage in her high heel shoes. It was an international competition, and her heel broke as soon as she got started. That happens. I know somebody who was standing so close to the edge of the stage that he fell off the stage. It happens. Technology may fall apart, as we all know. It happens. It's not the problem that things happen, it's how do you react to it. Do you get up and laugh about it and move forward, or do you run off the stage? And we can't run off the stage. We shouldn't.
That was a big part of my adjustment years ago, because I do stutter. You and I talked about that before. But I've been in the business for 30 years. But everything you just said about the nervousness from the microphone, from all the gaffes behind the scenes, whenever that happened, my mind, my mouth, and my body were all 3 different speeds. So talk to us again about how do you reclaim that and not have all that going. What are some practical tips to help people? Because I've had to learn how to sync this up. How do you help people do that?
Great question. If there's one takeaway from this conversation we're having, it's all about breathing. Breathing calms us down. Breathing helps us project our voice. Breathing helps us, and pauses help us eliminate those word fillers. And so it all comes down to breathing. And early in my career, I did a lot of work with people who stutter. And the foundation, at least the approach that I learned at the time, was you have to start with a breath. The breath carries your voice. And if that's not working, you can't speak. And if you're nervous, your breath is shallow. So I do have a technique that I teach people, and I call it candle breaths. And what you do is you imagine you have a candle in front of you, and you want the candle to flicker. You don't blow it out, but you want the candle to flicker. So if you're nervous, your breath may be like very jerky. But if you try to make the candle flicker, it might be, and then again. And as you make the candle flicker and your exhalations get longer, what do you think happens to your heartbeat? And all of a sudden you can breathe. So many people, and here's a perfect example, Rich, you get up to talk, it's time to talk, and you just start talking. Get yourself grounded first. Maybe take a breath and let it out. And then breathe in, and then begin.
That has been one of my biggest tips, especially on the live stage, because the adrenaline hits you, the crowd, the applause, the introduction, and you want to be amped up. You want to be ready to rock it. But at the same time, I always intentionally take one, and then I start off, because that is so important to set the pace of everything else.
Definitely. Because without that, and then again, if I don't use much breath, look what happens to my voice. You can barely hear it because there's not enough air going through. And if I have too much breath, I sound too breathy and it doesn't sound appropriate. It's not the breath or the voice that you want to have. So the breath is controlling the quality of your voice. So it's not simple.
So when we talk about the 3 V's of communication, you have something called the 3 V's. I'm really curious about this. What are the 3 V's, and what the heck do we have to know about these things?
Okay. Well, when you introduced me, you said that I help people speak, sound, and look like leaders. Well, think about the speech, the sound, and the appearance. The 3 V's for speaking would be the verbal. What do you say? How organized is your message? Do you get to the point? Is it grammatical? Does it have distractions of poor grammar? And that's going to affect what somebody might think of me. And that's the verbal. Then we have the vocal. How do you sound? Do you have a voice that's very nasal and that, like the nanny, if anybody remembers watching that, that nasal voice could be very irritating to listen to. Maybe I speak too fast. Maybe I speak way too slowly and I put my audience to sleep. Maybe I have monotone and there's no expression in my voice. Or perhaps I'm so perky that it's irritating to listen to that too. There are all these different features. Maybe my pronunciation isn't clear. Perhaps I have an accent. Maybe it's a foreign accent. Maybe it's a heavy New York accent, which I had to deal with. And that's what made me interested because I came from New York, but didn't live in New York. So my accent became a distraction. So the vocal is my sweet spot because I'm a speech and language pathologist. And that's where I help people sound more confident. The one thing I left out is the up talk. When people talk like this and they're trying to make a statement and it sounds like a question, that's not going to make you sound confident. So those are the vocal pieces. And then the visual is fairly clear cut. It's how do you look? Not just how do you dress, but how do you carry yourself? How is your posture? What do you do with your hands? What are your postures that are going to make you look friendly and open or closed off? What do you do with your eye contact? What about your facial expressions? Do you have a frown when you're talking to people? And then, Rich, with the virtual meetings, where do you look? Do you look at the camera or do you look at the thumbnail of the person? Because if you're trying to read their body language and look at them, right now I'm looking at you, but nobody thinks I am. I need to look at a camera. So the visual piece is very important. So if you have your verbal, your vocal, and your visual in alignment, that's when you're going to have that polished professional presence, which is what I work on with people.
So right now with the growth of the virtual stage, those are all train wrecks for a lot of well-accomplished speakers even, let alone CEOs, executives who are not used to the camera. They may have done events, platform presentations, but this now, like you just described, it is, where do you look? Who do you talk to? What do you do with your hands? What do you do with your body? What do you do with your image? And when COVID first hit, we all know we saw laundry, we saw bedrooms, we saw everything. And they were trying to be professional, doing that presence thing in their concert t-shirts. But now we've pivoted to realize this is a real thing, and we now have to bring it into the professional realm. So take it a step further. In this new space, what do you tell people when it comes to the voice, the eyes? How do you bring it all together here? I've got my ideas, but what are yours?
Well, the basics, and I actually have a video that I created on this, and we could actually send that out because after the first 2 weeks of the pandemic in March, I was attending these Zoom meetings and I was appalled. People I knew who were very professional and very meticulous, I would see them in a meeting, and when I saw what was going on in their office, I thought, how could they not clean it up or find a background? So there are several things that are important. One is your background. And the problem we have with virtual meetings is, and neither you nor I have this today, but if you use those virtual backgrounds on Zoom, you can't move around a lot because everything starts breaking up and disappearing. So if you have to use it because you are in your bedroom and your children are in your living room or dining room with their classes, sometimes you have to do those virtual backgrounds, or your company is using a background for you. They want you to use it. Be careful not to move too much, because that movement is when everything breaks up. So the background is very important. The lighting, and I know you're going to talk about this, the lighting is important. I have light shining on me. If I didn't, I wouldn't be as well seen. If you have a window behind you, you must close those shades, because if you're backlit, then you're a silhouette. So the background is important, the lighting is important, and the sound is important. A lot of people are just using the mic on their laptop. For some people it works. For other people, they might need an external mic and headset. And that depends on what your situation is. If there's noise around you, put a headset on. it's going to be much easier and shut out the rest of the noise. The
Well,
problem I've often seen that
and that extra noise is what makes you nervous quite often. It is the distractions of the lights being wrong, the window being wrong. All those are distractions, not just technical things you need to fix, because it's like the squirrel running through the camera frame. You're lost. You're gone. So people are maybe thinking techie right now, but to me, they're also back to that nervous state as well, aren't they?
well, you'll be nervous if things aren't working right, or if you're so distracted and you're watching yourself and you don't like what you see. Now, some people recommend shutting off your camera and don't look at yourself. I think it's good feedback. Just don't keep watching yourself. Look at the camera when you're talking. But it helps you see if you're centered or if you're moving around. And Rich, something else I thought of that we were talking about, you mentioned gestures. Whereas when you're on the stage, you can use lots of grand gestures. Now you have to stay within the confines of the frame, but you also have to be careful your gestures should be more lateral as opposed to coming forward, because if all of a sudden your hand gets really big, that seems strange too. So you have to be careful of that. And I've learned this because I interview a lot of people, and I have a series where I interview people. Be careful about jewelry and bangles and things that are making so much noise that the mic is picking it up and it becomes a distraction for the audience.
And those last couple of tips are all broadcasting tips. As broadcasters, we have learned that a long time ago, and that's a lot of what I'm bringing on in. Now, when it comes to the virtual stage, mine is a virtual background. But today I actually loaded a video and put it out there on the virtual background so you don't phase out. So you do have better lights, because you're right. You do want to present well. And a lot of the ways that we can present well is having a virtual backdrop. It gives you a studio. It gives you a setting. For me, this is a stage, and it helps me present like it's on a stage. Some people are still trying to present like a stage in their bedroom or in an office that still looks and feels like an office. So there's an advantage, but you're right. The lighting and the other thing have to be sharpened up to help you be confident in that space. I talk about creating an environment. What environment is going to help you be that leader, be present in your space, create your environment so you can rock it and do everything you're describing there.
And Rich, you said something really important. Depending the type of meeting that you're in, the question is, should you stand or should you sit? Now, I knew because you stand, I wanted to stand, so we're communicating the same way. I'm emceeing a meeting this weekend, and I know the person I'm interviewing will be seated. So it would look strange if I stood up and he were seated. So you want to know what the situation is. I mean, this is your show. You want to be standing, but because we were talking about this, I said, let me stand too. Right. And so you have to know when that's appropriate. Is it a talk or is it an intimate meeting where it may make more sense to be closer to the camera and talking to the person? So it depends. Just like you have to know your audience and know your situation,
so that you can lead effectively in the space and show yourself in the best light. I'm going to throw out another poll question here. Remember, in a little bit, we're going to open up and bring you on in so you can ask your questions and talk to Lynda directly and me, and it's going to be a great interactive fun time. But this is the one, speech disorders. Do you suffer from a speech disorder? Yes, no, maybe a slight stutter because you do get nervous like we're talking about. Maybe there are certain words that trip you up. There's a lot of people that have accents and things that they just can't get it. Or is there something else that maybe one of those disorder type issues? I'm going to launch this, let everyone have their chance to chime on in here. We're going to keep talking. You work with accents. You work with people that have dialects. I know as an actor and as a broadcaster, people get coached up to lose a Southern accent. They don't want much of y'all and Howie doing the 6 o'clock news. What other accents are things that you've worked with, and what are some of the tricks that help people overcome that?
Okay, well, accents. Let me talk first about regional dialects, like a New York accent or a Philadelphia accent. And I've done a lot of work in my career with professional singers, but I was helping them with their speaking voice. And I remember many years ago, somebody said to me, I just hate the nasal quality of my voice. And the more I thought about it, she had a Philadelphia accent. Now, that is not a disorder. So I want to clarify. There are communication disorders, and then there are just different patterns that we speak. So an accent is not a disorder. nor is a regional dialect. It's just a different way of speaking. And we all have accents. And we should embrace the fact that we all have accents. It's when that accent becomes a distraction, and that's all that person, the listener, is focusing on, that you might want to make the change. And with a foreign accent, it's when that accent is not understood. And I'm trying to present my research and people don't understand what I'm saying. Or I'm a doctor giving a prescription and the nurse doesn't know if I said 50 milligrams or 15. Is it 50 or 15? So there are many areas that I work on, Rich. I think the first thing to say with the regional dialects, a lot of it is all about the mouth and how much you open the mouth. And so I learned that as a New Yorker, your mouth is more closed and it's more nasal. And I did exercises I worked on myself first to open my mouth more, to be able to say things like I instead of I. And so there are exercises you can do to create more space inside your mouth so that you have a more resonant voice. And so that's one thing you do, and you can even do that with foreign accents. But foreign accents have other issues. The vowels may be different, the consonants are said different, so wine and vine can be confused. And more important, the rhythm patterns, like when I was talking about the 50 and 15, the rhythm may be different. Or somebody might say, can you develop the software? Well, it's develop, not develop. And so when you accent the wrong syllables, all of a sudden people don't understand you as much. So I work on that as well, on the stress patterns of American English to help people be more effective when they're communicating.
So let's go to our poll. By the way, that was fabulous because there's a lot of people with a lot of dialects, and especially with COVID and the mask right now, it's adding a whole other layer of communication. I'm deaf in my left ear, and I have a speech impediment that I've overcome, thank goodness. But I read lips more than people realize. And now with that mask and that shield, I think we're running into more of that as well for people, that people just are not aware of how much we read, we listen. It's much more visual than we ever imagined it was.
And I'm a lip reader. I do tend to read people's lips, and not because of a hearing loss. And so some of the masks, I was just looking to see, but I don't have it right here in the office. They do have the ones that are clear.
Yes.
They look a little strange. But then people can at least see your mouth. Think about the people who have hearing impairments and they can't read somebody's lips. Or think about if you go to an outside restaurant where they're wearing the masks, you're outside, there's noise. I can't understand the waitress or waiter because it's behind a mask. So we need to over articulate when we're behind a mask so our speech is more clear. Another thing.
And for leaders right now, that's really important. Be aware of that, especially the accents or the dialects, those slurs. You've got to be extra aware of that because people are missing the communication cues.
And while you mentioned that, Rich, you made me think of something else. When you're wearing a mask, of course, unless you have the clear one, they don't see your smile. But if you have a sincere smile, your smile goes up to your eyes. So don't think you can't be friendly and have a smile behind a mask, because you do see that in the person's eyes. And that's a way we need to almost exaggerate the use of that, because we don't have our mouth to show expressions as much with the mask on.
Fantastic. And smiles do help you communicate and slow down. They really do. So on this poll about speech disorders, no one in the group really says they have a speech disorder, but there are others. So that other category probably falls into some of what we were just probably talking about, right? What other disorders might be affecting speeches, presentations, leadership right now? What are some of the other things that the common person just may not be aware of?
Well, poor use of your voice. And many people who do a lot of speaking, especially campaigning or talking or teaching, or the teachers now who are doing Zoom sessions, vocal strain can be a big problem. And so you do need to take care of your voice. How do we do that? Use proper mic. Make sure it's amplified. Drink a lot of water. Hydrate your voice. Try not to strain your voice and yell from here, because we're back to the breath. Your breath is what's supposed to support your voice. And if you're breathing properly, you can get a very strong voice without straining your throat or your larynx. And so vocal strain is a common problem.
So we're going to bring everyone into the box here in just a second. Everyone get ready. Remember, cameras on, please. This is the virtual stage. We want you to engage with us. We'll have you turn your mic and come in and out. You get to raise the hand and say hello to us and talk to Lynda and myself. So as I start bringing them in, give us some really good pointers again, maybe more specific for that leadership, for the side of here you are on camera. This is a new platform. What else can we do to speak, present, and bring that total package alive with those 3 V's that you were talking about earlier?
Okay. 1 is prepare. 2 is do a dry run. Get yourself on camera and record a Zoom session, and then you can look back and see how you're doing. Make sure you know how to manipulate the PowerPoints, the slides that you're pulling up on the screen, or whatever it is, because you don't want to fumble. Another thing, if you need it, get an assistant to help you while you're leading. So if you're leading a meeting and you have the PowerPoints and the chat and that you want to poll people, it would help to have somebody else do those administrative type parts of the Zoom session so that you're free to engage with your audience and give the presentation that you think would be the best and most powerful presentation.
That last one is huge. The more technical we go with these, the more you need outside people off camera. It's a huge tip right there, because that's where you can stay present. You can nail it right here, because we are doing eye contact. We are looking at monitors. We are looking at notes. Texts are coming in. Chat boxes are coming in. Where do you look on the cube? There's so many things now. And the more proficient you get here, the more you're going to need someone else off camera to help you nail it. That's a huge one, I think.
And one more thing, Rich, because I'm working with some people right now who told me this. Depending how technical your work is and what you're doing with your clients, some of the people said they never have opened their camera up. And now with COVID, everybody's saying, open your camera. And they said, but sometimes they're trying to manipulate so many things on the platform to show their client that they don't want a picture of them like looking all over and being distracted. So there are times you should turn your camera off and let your voice describe what's there, because that's what they were doing before COVID. So we don't always have to have that camera on. Don't you get a relief sometimes when somebody says, let's just have a phone call?
Actually, I had one of those this week. Someone said, can we just have a good old-fashioned cell phone conversation? So yes, people are getting zoomed out, bombed out, fried out, and there's also that comfortableness of camera presence, being camera ready. And again, that's part of that professional line that's going further and further. I'm going to open this up to anyone in the room now, or you can drop it in the question and answer. The Q&A box is open, but we would love to hear your voice, since we're talking voice tonight. So you can turn on your microphone. If you flip on your camera for a minute, we'd love to see a smiling face and say hello. I know we have a great crowd out there tonight. So whoever would like to raise their hand. I see Dr. Tracy there. Hello.
And I'm actually going to move up a little bit closer.
Yeah.
I'm breaking all the rules tonight. I'm breaking all the rules tonight. I just worked out. I have terrible lighting, but I have so enjoyed this. Thank you, Lynda. And
my pleasure.
Wonderful. Yeah.
It's
tremendous.
Do you have a question for Lynda tonight at all while you got the camera on and doing such a fine job?
Yeah. Hey, Lynda, now, can you tell me about the lighting that you have? Where do you position that? Because now with the sun changing, I'm near windows, but do you put lighting in front of you, or do you have ring lighting? I've seen how Jeffrey Hazlett does it, but what do you recommend for lighting? And do you do the dark mode on your computer at night so the monitor doesn't hit you? What do you do?
That's a great question. And I happen to be fortunate that my husband's a videographer.
Oh, okay.
So I have an in-house professional helping me. But I actually have 3 lights on me. I have a halo light on this side where my hand is pointed. You can see on my arm. Okay. And then I have another light, an LED light over here. And then there's one straight ahead. Okay. And there is overhead, but the overhead light is never great. In fact, there's a videographer, Larry Wilner. So the overhead light often casts a yellow look to me. And actually, I had to switch from regular floodlights to LED floodlights because they were too, that you can get them white or you can get them warm or light. And so I changed the lighting because if I turn them off, then it's too dark and it just doesn't, and I can't work that way. It doesn't feel comfortable.
Just so you know, Larry will be on an upcoming episode as well. But we didn't want husband and wife hanging out for too long together. But he will be on. Lighting is a big thing, and also does give you that confidence. So I have right and left, and I have a center light. Staging for years and years has always been 3 lights. They cut the shadows, they cut the angles, and it fills your room. But you can start with a 1 ring light behind your camera on the other side of the camera, and the ring light will hit you really well and do the halo effect. The more advanced you get, that's fine. And like you said, Jeffrey has more lights and cameras than anyone needs to have.
But hey, Tracy,
what's your background, Rich? Is that a Zoom background or what is that?
This is something that I found that works really well with the hues and the lights because of the color and the lights. So I'm using a virtual green screen.
Okay.
But the blues and the gold are something I wanted for my branding. So I use this as well. And again, this really does help my confidence on stage. And the cool thing about this, I can go anywhere in the world. And I can still have my same studio, the same vibe everywhere I go. But you do need to figure out high definition graphic. It's a thicker green fabric now than the light one I used to have. It was just too sheer for lighting. So that's where you learn about lighting, textures. There's a lot of theater things that starts coming into this more and more.
But the virtual backgrounds that Zoom has, those are the ones that get so, we're not in my Zoom session. Let me see if I have it here.
Because they're all digital. And so they don't have the fabric, the grip. So this is absorbing light. So give me more depth. The other ones are strictly virtual digital ones.
Right. So this is a digital one. And when I start moving, let me just close this for a minute. And if I pick up my phone to show you something, that becomes extremely distracting when these things start happening. And when my hands move in front of my face in a way. So I don't recommend that. I think the green screen is going to be much more professional.
Okay, Rich, can you send a link of where you got that? Thank you.
Yes,
and
I can.
Lynda, I had people do me these beautiful virtual backgrounds, but you're right. Then you can't move because you lose arms and noses and
right.
No, you have to have a real green fabric to do this. But it makes a world of difference. What we just saw, that was a great comparison. I don't phase out.
Right.
Okay, well, tell me how you built that because I got some stuff coming up and I need that. So
we will help you
out.
I
love your books, Lynda. I think books are always beautiful. I read this article and they're like, don't be so pretentious with books. And it's like, it's not pretentious. I have a house full of books. It's just the way it is.
It's my office. It's my office.
I know.
And Tracy, the one thing to be careful of, just don't sit in front. Just don't sit in front of a window because that's when you'll become a silhouette.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great questions.
Yeah.
Who else
Tracy,
has a question? Raise a hand.
I do want to say one thing.
Yeah, please.
Lynda has read all of those books, so not.
Yes, I believe.
Trust me. So they're not just there for show. She reads. Now, if they were in my office, you notice what's in my background. I don't have any books. Get it? I have pictures. Get it?
Hey, however you learn.
I
We all
read
do
books.
differently. Yeah.
I read and write books. That's right.
Amen. I love it.
What other questions have we got on speech or stage or all this stuff that goes together? Because it really does blur together now. The more we want to present, the more confident we want to present. That's what the Rock on the Stage is all about. So what other questions do we have from the crowd here tonight?
Hey, Lynn, I think one thing you might want to just clarify, because you work so much with people around accent reduction, to really talk about that you're not trying to get rid of accents, to go into that you're just trying to get it. Maybe you should go into that a little bit because I think there's a misnomer around accent.
Right. And I thought I said that, but let me clarify that everybody has an accent. Right. So there's the New York accent. There's a Southern accent. There's the accent. Well, California has, quote unquote, the Valley Girl talk, or it's a big hybrid accent because most people aren't from California. They're all coming from different places. Boston has an accent. So all around the country, and I think accents are beautiful. I think they're wonderful. Like I said, though, so many people have come to me and said, I get up at a meeting, or I had this, and they'd say coffee, say chocolate, say Long Island. And it's like, listen to me. I'm trying to be professional. Just listen to me. Somebody like Bernie Sanders has a very heavy New York accent. Ruth Bader Ginsburg had a very heavy Brooklyn accent. It's okay to have it, but if it becomes a distraction in your profession, you may choose to tone it down. I read recently, and now it's very timely, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she was working early in her career in the DC area, tried very hard to minimize her Brooklyn accent. When she was on the Supreme Court and completely established in her career, it came back. She didn't care anymore. And so sometimes we just worry about it being a distraction. When 9/11 happened, I probably let my New York accent come out a little bit more because I identified with New York. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But I think what Larry mentioned is with a foreign accent, there is nothing wrong with a foreign accent. In fact, some people love to listen to accents.
Australian accents are beautiful.
Yes.
I love that.
But when you don't understand the person, that's going to be the problem. And again, I work with so many people on accents, and early in my career, it was trying to make every sound exactly clear. That's not really so important. I'm not so worried about the consonants. If somebody says this instead of this, you still understand them. Or the instead of the. Why would we spend hours doing that? But if you don't understand the name of their research study or what they're talking about, that's important. And a good way to work on your accent, the easiest first thing to do is to slow down.
That was going to be my next question. That was going to be my exact next question.
What happens is people have time to process what you're saying. And when I've told my clients to do this, especially with, let's say, a PowerPoint, and I say, slow down in between, they said, oh my goodness, when I slow down, I have time to think. And once I was working with somebody from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and because I've done virtual training for years, and I've always worked with people around the world, and he was giving a presentation in French. I'm sorry, he was giving a presentation in English, but his first language was French. I thought the presentation was being done in French because I couldn't understand it. And so I said to him, you must slow down. You must pause between. And he's the one who said it makes the world of a difference because especially you're speaking not your first language, it may be your third or fourth language. And I am in such awe of the people who are multilingual because I'm not, and many Americans are not, but they're conducting business in a language that's not their own. And they're brilliant in their education, but now they have to get up and present. Rich, you talk about being nervous. Add on top of it that it's not your native language. Right. I'm in such awe that people can do that.
I did it yesterday.
What's that?
I did it yesterday.
And how did you do, Catherine?
I got a really good feedback, actually. Yeah, I got. I tried to tell you personally. I don't want to brag over there.
No, you can brag. Yeah. I'd love to hear you brag. I know, Catherine.
I think my office director and my super office director, they told me, he said, I am a natural presenter. I was thinking, no, this is English. This is not my first or second language. How come I can be a natural presenter? So, but I think the feedback is very positive. And I did incorporate the things you taught me. So I want to say thank you. Yeah,
and Catherine, I'm glad you're saying that because you did share some information with me about how you start. Like if you have, there's so many technical presentations, and Catherine and I have talked about that they're very dry. What can you do to be different? And we talked about that, Catherine. Do you want to mention some things that you do now to make your presentations different?
Yeah, I think it's very important at the beginning to not start something was just like so not interesting. You can start with some questions, and your tone should not be just monotone. Should have should have pause and sometimes throw some questions to make them think. Or even you present some data, maybe you can say, what do you think this data can do, right? And then you can continue with, actually this data is really powerful. They can do blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
So those, right. You were even talking about just even not telling jokes, because people say, should I tell jokes? But you can use humor without telling a joke.
Yeah.
Right, Catherine? We were even talking about the good news is, what were you telling me?
Oh, yeah. I started with, I have a happy news that I'm the last presenter. So,
right, of a long morning. And so if you add those things, and again, I work with a lot of people, scientists and people who give very scientific, technical presentations, which can have one slide after another, and you're lost. And sometimes people who speak English as a second language rely a lot on those slides for good reason, because it helps make sure the audience is understanding them. But you don't want to be so caught up in your slides and just read them. And so you want to break it up and have some variety. I think now, even for American-born speakers, presentations have to be interactive. People don't want to be presented to, they want to have a conversation. So what Catherine said about even asking questions, even if it's a rhetorical question and they don't have to answer it, it changes it up and it makes it feel more like an interactive conversation.
Well, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this whole show, that it was all born, because people thought this was going to be boring. People thought this was going to be miles of separation. Instead, it can be very engaging. One of the best things I tell people is when you first start off any talk, to help slow yourself down, do a personal story. Do something that you really know inside and out. You don't go to the stats. It can have some humor in it, but it's you. This is kind of your thumbprint to establish yourself, and it's easy to flow out of that and then go to the big board with all the stuff. But if you go deep dive first, it forces that anxiety and all the things you were talking about. Is the clicker working? Oh, gee, did I have the right slide set up first? We've all seen that stuff happen. But the other way is you build relationship first, and then you roll into the content. Even virtually, that has changed so much now for people.
Rich, I'd like to add something. You made me think about this. I do a lot of pitch coaching, helping people in pitch competitions and with their startups. And I have a pet peeve. And my pet peeve is when somebody starts and says, like if it were me, I might say, hi, my name is Lynda Katz Wilner, and my business is Successfully Speaking. It's like, my name is, to me, sounds like a template. But if I say, hi, I'm Lynda Katz Wilner, that sounds more like a conversation. And again, with startups, with pitches, they have to tell a story. They have to talk about what their passion is, what makes their product different, why it's important, why you should invest. And so you have to be personal. You have to tell a story. But if you just start by my name is, or here's my other pet peeve, today I'm going to talk about, or I'm going to tell you a joke. Don't tell me what you're going to do it. But so many people do the other. Like, let me tell you a story. No. Once you have to hear what happened one time and then tell a story. You don't have to announce that you're giving a story. It makes
Now, let me ask you about this.
More distance.
So humor, we've talked about humor a little bit. So we all have foosballs on stage. As a stutter, I learned if I rolled into the humor and allow people to laugh with me through my stutter, they relax because they're looking for the train wreck. And that's one of the big fears of speaking. They're all waiting for the train wreck to happen. What I've learned is they actually want you to succeed, but if I can laugh with my stutter, even crack a joke, go, whatever it is, people will laugh with me and it de-escalates it and I can roll right through it. Talk about the use of humor with your voice in a way of when you do stumble and fall. What would you recommend to help people to keep it rolling despite the gaffe?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, a lot of people say to me, one of their biggest fears also is that they may forget what they're talking about. They lose track. Well, that's the reason you don't memorize, because if you memorize, you might fall off and not know where you were. But if you do have trouble and you do stumble, or you say, I just can't get that word out, just accept that. Or if you forgot something, there's nothing wrong with saying to the audience, I got so excited talking about that, I lost track. Does anybody remember where I was? And nobody is going to think you're a poor speaker because of that. So don't be concerned that you might forget something or trip over a word. Like the woman whose shoe broke, her heel broke in her presentation. Maybe she limped around the stage and that became part of it. So there are a lot of different things. And actually, oh my goodness, I forgot the name of the person in NSA. Is it Jean Robertson? She's a great humorist. And she told the story about the baton twirler. Tracy, do you know what I'm talking about? That was,
Yeah, Jeannie's got millions and millions of views. She's phenomenal, and I've seen her live. Yeah, she's great humor. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But she told the story about the baton twirler who threw the baton up in the stage because they had to do it inside, and the baton never came down. And then she kept baton twirling without a baton in her hand. It was a great story. If you can find the story, it's wonderful. But the fact is, bad things happen. Mm. If you laugh about it and just move on, people will love you for it. Mm.
And especially on the virtual stage, it changes. It helps so much here. Mm-hmm. What other question we got from the crowd here tonight? This is fantastic. Who else has got something to throw at Lynda here? Anybody?
No questions.
What do you do with words that you get stuck? Oh, no. Sorry. Tracy, go for it.
Lynda, yeah. Can I ask Lynda now, how do you roll share screen, PowerPoint? Do you do a blend? Is that, I've seen people do both. What do you think is the best thing for just like your 45-minute to an hour keynote? Is it more, kind of share the screen or off to the side? What do you think works best? Or is it very situational dependent?
I think it's situational dependent. It also depends how savvy you are.
Okay.
Are you a member of NSA, Tracy?
I am not.
Okay. National Speakers Association, and they've been talking a lot about this and all the options. And you can have things set up like the, Larry, you could help me with this, the Black Magic, which is a switcher, and it changes the screen. So I can probably switch to my other computer or laptop that has a PowerPoint and just flip a switch that way.
Okay.
Sometimes and now they have features where I think you can make PowerPoint slides in Zoom.
Yes.
But then you have to make sure you're standing in a certain spot and you're creating the text. And to me, that's a little bit cumbersome. I often use PowerPoints. And when I use the PowerPoints, I don't like the fact that I'm getting small in the top corner of the screen.
Right.
And so I'm a PC user, not a Mac. But I think there's eCam with a Mac, and you can show, or you could be standing in front of your slides. There are a lot of sophisticated things you can do. I don't have enough experience in that, Tracy.
Okay,
but I know a lot of people do.
Yeah. Let me tack on, Tracy. So with the green screen, I can step up, and this becomes my wall, my presentation. So instead of having the PowerPoint slide box that you've seen, I can actually do this. Also, the machine that they were talking about, the Black Magic machine, you can have a separate computer already lined up. The PowerPoint is open. You can click it off camera, and it will transition seamlessly. With Zoom, there's a clunkiness. Let me go to that little tab. Let me do this. Let me go.
I don't like the share screen. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, that's very clunky. Also, the brand new Zoom does have an integrated part where you can make your box bigger, so you can present bigger. It used to be very tiny. So they are beginning to upgrade technology. In a couple of weeks, Larry's going to come on, and we're going to have a whole nother conversation. So you have to come back.
and Tracy, if you notice, I switched cameras when I was standing up at a different camera. And I just started doing this. So I was standing up with a different camera, and then I wanted to come closer, and now I'm seated. But you see, if I go stand up right now, it doesn't work. But if I switch, I just switched cameras with a button, and now I'm standing up. And if I wanted to here, I could even have a chart or writing there. So there are a lot of things, and there's so many sophisticated things people in the National Speakers Association are doing.
Tracy, I'm going to have a link on that. We actually did a whole show. There's a previous show on the ATM meaning, ATEM. It's about as big as a tissue box, and maybe weighs about as much as 3 tissue boxes put together. There's the Mini and then the Mini Pro. different features, but it's basically a TV switching studio that is unbelievably easy. And that one we do have banked already. It's up on the YouTube channel and stuff. So we're bringing that type of stuff to the show because of technology is advancing so quickly. We're all realizing we want our stuff to be smooth, professional, not clunky. And this is morphing very quickly. That's a great question.
Awesome.
So
What else
much
we have for a
keeping-
question tonight with a little bit of time left we have?
I don't have question. I'm from yesterday. I'm exhausted, so I'm really in the relaxing mood. Sorry.
Let me do this in the final couple moments. I started this recently, and I love doing this. This is my gift to my guests for Lynda, is if anyone would like to, what was your biggest takeaway tonight? And we let you literally give back to her a thank you. And this has been a fun thing that I don't tell the guests in advance, and don't tell anybody for future guests. But this is my gift at the end of the show to say, you rocked it, and here's what the people really, really got. So anyone wants to just share what they got, jump on in.
Where would I start? I mean, just dialing it in so it looks very professional. Lynda, I love that. I get very excited when I'm talking about what I love. So I love the pace, the cadence. That's a great, at least I stare at the camera now and don't look down at somebody like this. Okay, so I'm getting better, but I love the lighting. I also really liked the interaction. Rich is in my computer. Rich is on one side, you're on the other. And Rich, I just love your smile. I mean, that's so engaging and nice. And Lynda, your smile too. It's just, it's really nice seeing you guys. They said that the virtual thing is just a much more intimate form of connecting because we get up close with the speakers. And then podcasting is even more intimate because somebody's in your ears and in your head. So I just feel like you're raising the game on how to really just look like you're there for that person and you showed up and you look professional and you're ready to deliver to them. And thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. By the way, there are no back seats anymore. That is one of the things. You're right. This is very intimate. People did not see that coming. There
Right.
are no back seats.
You get to look at your speakers, your Marcus Buckinghams, your Ken Blanches, you know, you're like this. And that's really cool.
Well,
Who else
one
has
thing
got a thank you?
I just wanted to say, listening to Catherine before, I speak English as a primary language, and my wife will tell you that I don't do that very well. And to think that somebody can actually speak English as a second language and in a technical space and communicate in a way that people say that you're a good presenter. I don't know who you're working with as a speech teacher, but whoever that person is, she's remarkable. So, and I think you're remarkable. It's remarkable what you're able to do. I can't even fathom trying to speak, whether it's Italian, Chinese, or whatever it is, and present in a foreign language. It's hard enough in English, let alone to do it. All the kudos to you for doing that. It's amazing.
Well, I would just pass your kudos to my wonderful teacher, Lynda, right away. And she's wonderful. So
This is one big commercial.
Yeah. Hey, can I ask one other thing? I am hearing from some of the people now that they are actually recording their stuff ahead of time and then it's played at a later time. Any thoughts on that? You know, I guess you act like somebody's there, but you don't have the chat rooms, you don't have the polls. But what do you think about that? Do you guys do a blend of both, or what do you think?
I know a lot of things, but I know somebody who knows a lot more than me because Larry just created an entire event that was supposed to be a face-to-face
We
event.
had a 3-hour event that was completely pre-recorded content.
Oh, I love that. Okay, excellent.
The only thing that was live was the question and answer periods that Lynda moderated, and we did that through a separate feed. But it depends on what you're trying to do, but if it's a really important event or conference, the more you can pre-record and edit and pre-edit and dress it up, the better. And really, nobody even noticed. I mean, the people that were on.
Well, that's what I wonder. And Lynda, are there any different nuances or recommendations for that? I mean, it seems like there wouldn't, but is it any different? I mean, I like knowing people were there and seeing them, but.
Well, you know, it's interesting. No, I think besides Larry's event, the National Speakers Association, which has the best speakers in the world, they had to make the event. It was going to be hybrid, and then it became a virtual event. And almost every part was recorded, and you felt, like you were saying, you're up close and personal with these wonderful speakers, but sometimes you couldn't tell. And then there was one segment that was live, and it was like, they said, well, we're really the one part that's live. And you never would have thought, because they just, like Larry, you just
Okay.
push the
Good.
button, it goes, and you hear a speech. Larry had panel discussions. You felt like you were there watching the panel,
Good.
but it was done 2 weeks before or however.
Okay.
One of the tricks.
Yeah,
of
because I've
that
got
is,
some coming up
Tracy,
like that.
there is one trick behind the scenes that most people do not realize when you're doing those playbacks. So if I'm going to be on one of those speaker panels, I literally go on a live event when it's streaming. I join in the chat box. So the chat box is still active and people are asking questions. You literally go in the chat box while you are on tape and you join the conversation and answer questions in real time while you're on camera. And people think you're amazing. They don't know it's Memorex. You never tell them it's Memorex, but they get the personal engagement this way and they get you here. That's the extra gold that you can do sometimes. And personally, I like the live stuff because I love the live crowd. At the same time, I have done the other, and I got 2 events coming up just like that. And we are talking about staging it out, but not letting people know that it is in the can. Never. That's part of the illusion of TV. Welcome to broadcasting. Everybody's a broadcaster now. That's part of the illusion that we get to create with our events.
And if I can add something, because I just remembered now that you asked this, Tracy, I was doing an interview series where we did the interview ahead of time, and then we played the interview in a Zoom session. There's one key thing you had to think about. They couldn't tell because the speakers wore the same outfit the day of. And we had the same background. And so you did not know that you just watched the video. I mean, you watched the recording and now they're talking to you. So it went seamlessly if people have the same backgrounds and the same clothing.
That is the other big tip, and I've done that twice now, and people did not know we were not in the same studio. That's an old broadcasting trick that we now do. But you can email the same JPEG, the same image. Everyone puts their green screen on, and you have it virtually set up. So I have my logo on one side. The other curtain did not have it, the other one. So it looked like one seamless room, but the logo was always on one end. And it worked beautifully. So yeah, these are the things that we can teach you that will help your events. So keep coming back because we're going to keep having more and more of these type of practical things that help you rock your stuff. Well, everybody, I thank you for being with us tonight. Don't forget, coming up next week, Tina Greenbaum is going to be with us. She is a peak performance coach, executive coach, leadership specialist, working with employees and working with teams. She is going to help people to actually figure out how to better communicate and present virtually in leadership and teams. And in 2 weeks, Elsa Page will be with us, the entrepreneur consultant, and she is working on building communities. Everyone's building Facebook and LinkedIn and whatever groups are building. It's all virtual relationship now. She is going to help us better understand how to do this through camera, through video, through texting, and all the things that make this all come alive much more. Lynda, final parting shots from you tonight. What would you want to say to everyone to make sure they walk away here tonight knowing something special that will help their speech game on camera on these great events?
Okay. I fully believe you want to remember the 3 V's of communication. And I do have something real quickly that I can send out to you. I can get the emails and just send it, a list of what's involved in those 3 V's. But to remember your visual, how you look, your vocal, how you sound, and the verbal, what you say. And the other thing to think about, and it helps with nervousness, it helps with voice, it helps with fluency, is always remember to breathe. And that helps us also in difficult conversations. Take a breath, create space, and we're much more grounded, and we're also better able to listen, which we didn't even talk about tonight.
Lynda Katz Wilner.
Visual, vocal, verbal.
That's perfect. Lynda, thank you for being with us tonight. Again, in the post show notes, so everyone watching on the playback, we will have all this in the liner notes, links, connections. Go get with Lynda. Make sure you're getting good coaching, good quality stuff. And above else, always have fun. No matter what, have fun on these cameras, on these events. because fun is going to translate into a good time for everybody. So make sure you do that. Follow us, like us. We have a YouTube channel committed to all of our backlog. Remember, we're going to C-Suite. All this is going to that platform with C-Suite TV. And there's some other great new wrinkles coming just around the corner. So keep coming back on How to Rock the Virtual Stage. We're always live Wednesday nights, 6 until 7 o'clock Mountain Time. Get on Eventbrite, follow us, like us, and come on back. We'll do it again next week. Thanks again for joining us tonight. I'm the Trigger Rich Bontrager. Thank you, everybody. It was great. We'll see you around.